can accomplish this work together. And I will say we a lot because of the partnership, even though I am a staff of one. Can you see my screen?
I don't think you pulled it up yet, Carla. You have to.
How's that now?
There you go. Got it now. Thank you.
Great, great. Okay, so here is the geographical area of the CWMA. The CWMA covers the southernmost 11 counties of Illinois, and this is approximately 2.5 million acres. And these are all the counties with the Shawnee National Forest presence. So we do work closely with the Forest Service. So the topography of southern Illinois is maybe not quite what you would expect if you've never visited. It's rolling hills. It is at the southernmost extent of the Wisconsinian glaciation. So we have sandstone bluffs, hills, outlooks. So this is from Garden of the Gods Indian Point Trail, one of our most visited sites in the Shawnee National Forest. And then we also have the northernmost extent of the southern cypress swamps. So we also have wetlands. So this diversity of habitats that we have really maximizes the biodiversity of the area. So we really do have a lot to conserve. And this is a map of our conservation opportunity areas in southern Illinois. And these are set out by the Illinois Wildlife Action Plan. We have the LaRue Pine Hills area in the western Shawnee, the eastern Shawnee National Forest, and also the Cache River Cypress Creek area. So there are 3 conservation opportunity areas that cover a large part of the river-to-river CWMA. Additionally, besides the 3 COAs and the Shawnee National Forest, we have 3 national wildlife refuges, 15 state parks, 22 state natural areas, 9 NGO conservation areas, and also thousands of acres of conservation easements. We have almost 2,100 species of flowering plants and 107 state threatened and endangered species within the CWMA territory. And 62% of the species in greatest need of conservation that are set out by the Illinois Wildlife Action Plan invasive species campaign are directly threatened by invasive species. So because we have so much to potentially lose, the CWMA was established in 2006. It took a year to hire a full-time coordinator. This was done in 2007. And many of you may know Chris Evans. He was the first coordinator of the CWMA, and he has since moved on to a statewide position where he coordinates the programs for all invasive species, not just plants, across the state through the Illinois Wildlife Action Plan Invasive Species Campaign. So in 2013, near the completion of my PhD from Southern Illinois University, I was hired on as coordinator. And our organization now has 13 partners. We added a new partner this past year. And these partners consist of federal and state agencies, other nonprofits, and universities. And I'll talk a little bit about the structure of the organization later, but we are a project within the Shawnee Resource Conservation and Development. We have 3 very broad focus areas: education and awareness, organization and capacity building, and coordinated control efforts. So our steering committee is made up of all of these partners, 3 National Wildlife Refuges, as well as Shawnee RC&D, the Department of Transportation, the U.S. Forest Service, APHIS, Illinois Department of Natural Resources, the Nature Conservancy, Illinois Department of Agriculture, University of Illinois Extension, NRCS, and Southern Illinois University Carbondale. So we are solely grant funded and project based. So it's up to me to identify the needs of our partners and then write grants to fund those projects that need to happen. I am full-time. The position that I'm in now was first funded in 2007 through a National Fish and Wildlife Foundation pulling together initiative grant along with the matching state grant. And initially there was 1.5 years of guaranteed funding, and then it's up to the coordinator from that point on to acquire grants. And so far we've been very successful in funding the organization. You can see currently, or you can see the history of the grants that we've received here. Currently we are on a state wildlife grant, and we're just finishing up a Forest Service state and private forestry grant. So our steering committee consists of one member from each organization, each partner organization. We do have a memorandum of understanding, which is kind of an agreement that we will all work together. It's non-legally binding. And then we use Shawnee RC&D as our umbrella group. So they are our nonprofit status, and they are the fiscal manager for the CWMA. We identify the needs of the steering committee, and then we also have now a draft strategic plan that we will ratify in our next meeting, and we do meet quarterly. We will use the strategic plan to help the agencies inform their management decisions, prioritize what species we're going to control, direct their management activities, and then it also will define the goals and objectives for the CWMA. So ideally, we will build upon existing CWMA and partner programs to maximize existing programs. And our goal that's set out in our MOU is to work cooperatively in inventorying, monitoring, controlling, and preventing the spread of non-native invasive plants across jurisdictional boundaries in the 11 southern counties of Illinois. So working across boundaries, this picture pretty well summarizes what happens when you don't work across boundaries. So you have the landowner on the right side that has had control work done on bush honeysuckle. The landowner on the left side has not. So you can see that obviously, you know, the land that has not had control work is going to quickly reinfest the control work that has been done. So the CWMA is an organization that can help with this problem of control across boundaries. And we want to address invasive species concerns at whatever the appropriate scale is, regionally for bush honeysuckle. And we also help communicate, and we help with collaboration across these agencies and landowner boundaries. So again, it's all about collaboration and communication. Our steering committee members play a huge role in directing both of these activities. And then we also have other partners that we work with almost on a daily basis that are not part of our steering committee. But you can see I've listed some of them here in gray, and these are just some of the organizations that I've worked with over the past year to accomplish invasive species control or outreach. We also work extensively with private landowners to help educate landowners and provide technical assistance. And then not only landowners, we often find that they are just concerned citizens, people that see the growing invasive problem, and even though they may not own any land, they still want to help out with our public lands. So since we are building a network, it's incredibly important that we are willing to find new partners and bring new organizations into this control effort to help expand our network so that we can accomplish more. So I'll go through a few of the projects, and most of these are projects that have either been a continuation of what the CWMA has done in the past. There are a few new things that we started this year, but I'll try to kind of break them down into our focus areas: education and awareness, organization and capacity building, and then implementation of coordinated control efforts. But as I was trying to organize the presentation, I hope it's a sign of success. Well, I know it is, that our projects fall all across several of these areas. So most projects have 2 or even all 3 of these focus areas as components of them. And I would like to think that this is a successful building of these projects so that we receive the maximum impact for each of our projects that we pursue. So an example of some of our education and awareness activities, we've held several landowner field days this past year, agency trainings. We do maintain a website that is a host for many different resources for invasive species control in Southern Illinois. And we have published several publications, and we're currently working on a few new ones as well. So this is the Trail of Tears State Forest. It is part of the Illinois Ozark system. You can see the hills in the background there. And this is one of our conservation opportunity areas. So we try to focus quite a bit of our efforts around the conservation opportunity areas. And we held our most recent invasive plant and forest management field day here at Trail of Tears. And this was co-sponsored by NRCS, the CWMA, National Wild Turkey Federation, and the Illinois Wildlife Action Plan. And we had 4 different speakers, and we took our participants out into the field to show them firsthand management techniques and invasive species ID. So we have a large number of resources on our website. We do have a list of 34 species of concern in Southern Illinois with links to their ecology, distribution, and identification. And we also have this interface with EdMaps so that people who come to our website are able to log into EdMaps and then mark the occurrence of invasive species in the area. So we have put out several publications. We put out the first invasive species alert for Japanese chafflower, which is a relatively new invader for our area. We've done outreach for aquatic invasive species. We've published the invasive plants of Southern Illinois, which has been a pretty important resource as far as our local training workshops and field days. And then our newest publication is the field guide to the identification of Japanese stiltgrass. And there's also a link to this on the website if you're interested in accessing that. So coming within the next year, we've received an Illinois Wildlife Preservation Fund grant to publish the sequel for invasive plants of Southern Illinois. So this will be volume 2, which will be control and management of those species. The first publication dealt primarily with identification, so this will take it one step farther. And then Chris Evans gave an extremely successful webinar to the Illinois Forestry Association on the identification and control of woody invasive species in fall and winter. He also published a blog article on this webinar. So the information is available on his Illinois Invasive Species Awareness Month blog. But from that article, we would like to create a publication that we can actually hand out to landowners that will cover the information from this webinar. Additionally, we are working with the Southeastern Illinois Prescribed Burn Association a little bit more these days to help integrate prescribed fire in the management of invasive plants. So we plan to put out a publication that is specific to Southern Illinois that deals with some of the challenges that landowners might face when they use prescribed fire, and then best management practices for conducting prescribed fires. We have some demonstration plots that have been an extremely valuable educational tool, and they're located right behind the Visitor Center at our Giant City State Park. So what the demonstration plots are, so the south side of the plot is completely uncontrolled. All the invasive species are left. And then on the north side of the plot, we do annual control work. So there's a trail that winds through both parts of that plot. And it's apparent to anyone just walking through the trail what the impacts of invasive species really are. So this has been an important educational tool, and we use it for field tours, but it can also be self-guided because we do have signage. We are also working with the Hydrilla Task Force, which is coordinated by Kathy McGlynn of the Northeastern Illinois Invasive Plant Partnership. So the Hydrilla Task Force is a group that is trying to put in place the protocol that we can follow if and when hydrilla is first detected in Illinois. We know that it's coming down the Ohio River, and it's possibly just a matter of time before someone brings it into one of the lakes in southern Illinois. So through the hydrilla hunt program, we're trying to do as much outreach as possible to the public so that people who use the water recreationally are able to identify hydrilla and then report it so that we're able to control the infestations early. And also related to hydrilla, this is exciting to have a billboard. It's along the Ohio River through Ohio and Indiana, but the CWMA is part of this project. So it's sponsored by the Appalachian Ohio Weed Control Partnership, the Southern Indiana Cooperative Invasives Management, and Wildlife Forever, as well as the Ohio River Basin Fish Habitat Partnership. So we're really trying to get the word out that you need to watch out for hydrilla and prevent its spread. We've done several kids programs in the past year as well, and these have always been a lot of fun as well as incredibly rewarding. For Stewardship Week at the University of Illinois Dixon Springs Ag Center, approximately 3,400 kindergarten through 6th grade students go through these stations that are set up all throughout the week, and I've also spoken to children at the Conservation Mini Fair, which is through some of our soil and water districts, and I've given several hikes and presentations to kids as well. So for organization and capacity building, so the goal here is to increase the technical knowledge base of both private landowners and our agency staff to accomplish planning and prioritization for our control work, and then to continue to establish the CWMA as a source for information and assistance in our region. So we started with our CWMA members, our steering committee members, and we surveyed each representative to determine their focus, priorities, and project needs. And this was done in 2007, and we recently did this as well in 2013 to try to help determine the future needs and the future directions of the CWMA. So once needs are identified, we try to set up directed and applied research when appropriate, and we try to connect funding sources with researchers. So we've done this quite a bit with Southern Illinois University, and there is currently some research going on now that the CWMA has helped establish initially. So we're just finishing up a project on bush honeysuckle survey, prioritization of control, and then actual control and management. So there were a couple of different phases of this project. We of course surveyed and mapped infestations, then we prioritized these locations to then inform management. This was from a state and private forestry grant, and there were several partners that were involved: the Shawnee RC&D, IDNR Forestry, IDNR Natural Heritage, the Illinois Department of Transportation, the Forest Service, Shawnee National Forest, the NRCS, and as well we worked with Applied Ecological Services. So Applied Ecological Services did all of the aerial survey work that was done and all of the GIS work for the project. So it had two main phases. The first was survey, prevention, and EDRR, or Early Detection Rapid Response. And then the second had to do with landowner assistance and then strategic control of the populations that we found. So our survey area was the area surrounding the Trail of Tears State Forest. So you can see the Trail of Tears State Forest here, and we surveyed the area that's within the black polygon here by aerial imagery. So Applied Ecological Services collected a continuous GIS layer from the air, and then they looked at this to try to determine if they could detect the vegetation that has not yet gone dormant, with the assumption that this would be primarily bush honeysuckle. This was done when the overstory canopy had already lost its leaves in the fall, but the bush honeysuckle was still green. So we were hoping that we would find some sort of automated process for detecting bush honeysuckle. But we found that often the bush honeysuckle was not detected in the understory, and we also had some false positives. So basically anything green, such as the evergreens or even fescue in lawns, came up as indistinguishable from bush honeysuckle. But from this, we've decided that we would like to go back and redo this aerial survey using digital aerial sketch mapping, which basically allows you to fly over and then draw polygons onto a screen as the map on the screen moves. You can just draw the polygon of the bush honeysuckle infestation right there. And hopefully we'll be able to do that next year. We also completed a ground survey for ground truthing of the data that was collected aerially. And over 2 days, 1 day per year, we were able to cover 5,000 acres with 18 volunteers. And the Trail of Tears State Forest is somewhat unique because it has lots of ridges and valleys, and there are fire lines that are built on the ridges. So it was pretty easy for the volunteers to walk along these ridge tops and look down into the valleys and detect the bush honeysuckle without having to walk over long distances. So we were able to accomplish quite a bit of work. We will be going back on Monday. This will be our last volunteer event for the year, but we want to collect data in this area of the forest that has not been mapped yet. So from the data from the ground survey, we were able to get some control work done in this area. We had an intern from the SIU Center for Ecology, Austin Sloan. He visited 150 of the waypoints out of 258. And he spent approximately 100 hours to do this and to go out and control the infestations that were found. But this was important because of the kind of rough terrain. It was important that he knew exactly where he was going, carrying all the equipment. So it really helped speed up his work because we did that initial survey. We also offer landowner assistance in a variety of ways. We do have an equipment bank that was established through an Illinois Wildlife Preservation Fund grant. So we have equipment that landowners can borrow. We do currently have a cost share program. We had cost share through our state and private forestry grant that we were finishing up. And then we also have some state wildlife grant money for a 75% cost share. We also offer technical support and workshops to landowners to teach them how to manage the invasives on their land. So for our 2013 cost share program, we were able to help 17 landowners with approximately 290 acres of infested land, and this was primarily with bush honeysuckle with a few additional species in some cases. So we had to prioritize our control, and we did this by looking at the severity of threat to any high-quality natural areas or rare species that would result from this infestation. We kind of looked at the probability of successful control and the potential for restoration of these lands. And it's not a stated priority, but when I first met the landowner, I kind of went through an interview process with them. And one of the things that I was looking for was that they understood that this was a one-time assistance in management, and that they would then be responsible for following up the work each year. And it was non-binding, but everyone that we spoke to that was really interested in this work was also interested in continuing it for the additional time. We also were looking for properties that we could use as leverage for additional assistance programs, such as EQUIP. And then we also took into account which invasive species were on the land and the location of the land in our prioritization. We prioritized areas that were near the conservation opportunity areas or our refuges or our national forest. So I hope that some of this research will be published this year. First of all, I'd like to get out our boot brush efficacy study. This was done in conjunction with SIU. There was a researcher that took soil samples from beneath the boot brushes and all along the trails to determine what seeds were present beneath the boot brush. So hopefully we'll have that finished up and out soon in the scientific literature. We've also been doing some work with Japanese chafflower ecology and distribution through the SIU Department of Plant Biology, and we're looking right now at an efficacy study for enhanced control of autumn olive, bush honeysuckle, and oriental bittersweet with Dow AgriSciences, and we'll be using a low-volume basil bark application of triclopyr in basil oil, and we'll be adding a little bit of aminopyrrolid to see how we can increase the rate of control on these species and possibly how much we can decrease the rate of triclopyr by adding the aminopyrrolid. We'll also continue our aquatic boat ramp surveys, and that's a picture of chafflower there. So our aquatic species surveys, these were the interns with the CWMA that did the first year of the survey. There are 62 boat ramps in southern Illinois that they surveyed for presence and absence of a set of aquatic weeds. And we'll continue this next summer. It's going to be a really good program. We're going to work with the University of Illinois Extension Master Naturalist program, and we'll train the Master Naturalists in aquatic weed ID, and then they'll have a set number of boat ramps that they'll go visit in groups and collect this data for another year. So we want to develop this capacity to implement our plans. We want to look at key watersheds, landowners and species. We want to find several contractors that are capable of conducting these control projects, and we do have a list of vetted contractors. We want to increase the capacity as far as funding to help with this work. We want to help advise both private landowners and agencies on the appropriate control methods for each species. And then we want to try to assess equipment needs for each of these projects so that we're sure that we have the appropriate tools to accomplish this work. So for control and management, kind of like I mentioned before with their cost share program, we've been working with landowners to control invasive species, and primarily we've been targeting bush honeysuckle. And we've seen bush honeysuckle dramatically increase over the past couple of years. So that's one that we're really targeting and trying to get education and awareness to the public about. We also provide technical assistance in control and the development of management plans. I often will go out and survey a landowner's land and tell them what invasives they have on site, and I'll give control recommendations. We are also focused on the prevention of spread. I hope that we're able to establish at least 3 more boot brushes across the region this year. And we also have our Stop Aquatic Hitchhikers program, which will be, in addition, we will add the hydrilla outreach that we'll be doing in the early spring. And I'm very happy to say that we'll be hiring a new strike team very soon. The strike team will start up again in January. And you can see here for the years that the strike team has been in action, all the acres that they've treated. There was a lapse in funding for 2013, so we're really excited that we'll have them back on board in 2014. But this is modeled after the National Park Service exotic plant management teams. We will have 2 full-time employees dedicated to invasives control. And they keep detailed records through the WIMS system, through the Nature Conservancy. And they'll focus on incipient infestations and pathways. And this program received the Natural Areas Association National Stewardship Award. So this is a study that we're doing at Lake Mermet in southern Illinois on curly pondweed. So an infestation of curly pondweed was detected 5 years ago, and since then IDNR has been working with the CWMA to monitor the population and to do yearly control. So in the picture on the left you see Chris Evans with the Illinois Wildlife Action Plan and IDNR fisheries biologist Chris Bickers, and they're taking a sample of the soil from the bottom of the lake, and then I'm sifting through that sample to try to find turions. And here you see turions, which are the vegetative propagules that overwinter. So we're looking for these, and we did this in a grid system, kind of an irregular grid system, and you can see all the yellow dots are areas where we found turions in the sample here. And at one place we did find turions that were greater than 15 per sample. So the average turion per sample was 2.72. The number of samples having turions was 41%, and the number of collected turions that were viable were 27%. Well, I can show you these graphs of how the control work has been working. So since the first control effort in 2009, you can see there's been a steady decrease in the population as far as the change in turions per sample. It looks like in 2013 we had a population increase, but I really think that's because in this graph we've accounted for the turions that we detected them. They were there, but they were probably not viable. The tissue didn't seem like it was. It seemed like it was beginning to decay. So I think our next year's survey will show a marked decrease again. So we've had several volunteer work days throughout the year. I'm very happy to say that in 2013 we had 989 volunteer hours that were donated to invasives control work. And our last event will be held Monday, and if the weather will hold for us, I'd like to see us break 1,000 hours. So I'll show you a few of the flyers for our events and talk a little bit about some of the volunteer events that we've done. We did this project on National Public Lands Day with the Shawnee National Forest, and it was also co-sponsored by Keep Carbondale Beautiful. So this part of the Shawnee National Forest is a little bit remote from our typical volunteer pool. So Keep Carbondale Beautiful actually provided a carpool from the western side of southern Illinois all the way to the eastern side where we did our survey at Garden of the Gods Indian Point Trail. And you can kind of see the scenic outlook here. This is one of the most commonly visited areas in the Shawnee. So we were able to kind of get a handle on the number of invasives and their location at this area. And we only were able to detect 4 invasives that were abundant enough to take data on with the occasional. So we took data on Japanese stiltgrass, garlic mustard, autumn olive, multiflora rose, and we found occasional patches of Japanese honeysuckle as well. So we had 26 volunteers that came out that day, and they all learned how to ID the plants, and they collected the data, and from this data we'll develop maps along with management plans. And it's my hope that we'll be able to work with the Golconda Job Corps in the future, and we'll help train them to manage these species, and they can actually go out and manage this trail. They've already done quite a bit of trail maintenance work, and this will just be one more thing to add to their accomplishments at this site. So this was a picture of our group there for our volunteer event. And as part of a Central Hardwoods Invasive Plant Network project that was also sponsored by the Ohio River Basin Fish Habitat Partnership, we canoed the Cache River Basin looking for purple loosestrife this season. So the surveys that the CWMA did were within the Ohio River Basin, which the cache is. And we had 18 volunteers that came out to canoe with us. And I'm very happy to say that we did not find any purple loosestrife, but it was a really fun day. We would send off one canoe into the buttonbush area, and they would have to find the edge of the water and check to see if any purple loosestrife was established in certain areas. So we are seeing in southern Illinois an increasing problem with burning bush infestations in our forested lands. So the Dixon Springs Ag Center at the University of Illinois has a pretty abundant woodland that's adjacent to the Shawnee National Forest. And they had the largest infestation of burning bush that I've seen in southern Illinois. So the director of the Forest Resource Center there, Jim Kirkland, brought this to my attention, and we decided that we would host a volunteer day at the Dixon Springs Ag Center to both control the burning bush, but also to raise awareness about the problem. So we sent out press releases about our volunteer day and our accomplishments that day, and we trained the volunteers there that day to identify a burning bush and to control it. So it was a really successful event. We had over 30 volunteers that came out that day, and it was also co-sponsored by the Illinois Forestry Association. So that's a picture of some of our volunteers there. We had master naturalists that came out to help, as well as members of the Southeastern Illinois Prescribed Burn Association, the Department of Forestry at SIU. We had lots of different groups that were represented that day. So our last event for this year is going to be our third annual Bush Honeysuckle Survey event at the Trail of Tears State Forest. And we'll be looking for bush honeysuckle again, walking along the fire trails in the southeastern part of the forest. And I hope that the leaves are still on the plants after this weekend's weather moves through, but we'll have to see what the conditions look like. So with that, I hope that I've conveyed to you at least some of the collaboration that's going on with the CWMA and all of our partners, because this collaboration and these relationships are so incredibly important to the success, to any success that the CWMA might have. So I'd like to thank all of our partners, and with that, I'd be happy to take any questions you have.
Thanks, Carla. Couple of questions coming in right now. One, treatment methods for water invasives such as your pondweed control. I guess that's a question. What are the treatment methods you use for water invasives, such as when you do your pondweed control?
You know, our IDNR fisheries biologist has been doing that annually in February, and I know that it's somewhat of a process to. I believe he treats with fluoridone, and then he has to monitor the concentration of fluoridone in the water for several days following that treatment.
And I guess just to follow up, do you have any Eurasian milfoil in your waters?
Yes, there has been some Eurasian milfoil detected.
Okay. What's your annual budget, if you have that off the top of your head, I guess, was another question.
It's approximately $52,000 a year.
Okay. And I guess another related talk is, how is your strike team funded, and what is the approximate cost of that?
And you know, I would actually have to defer to the Nature Conservancy on that for this next go-round of the strike team. I'm actually not sure what their annual budget looks like for this grant cycle.
Mm-hmm. And I know those can really fluctuate. We have a strike team model we're building for Department of Defense right now to emulate the EPMTs from the Park Service. You know, 3 people for a couple months, you can really get up there in cost just because of the travel costs and the equipment and personnel. But,
and yes, and that is a problem as well for Southern Illinois. We try to locate the strike teams centrally, but some of the sites they have an hour's drive or more just to get to each of the sites.
Mm-hmm.
So that is an issue for us as well.
Michael Stoll asked the question, what's the relationship of your CWMA with local farmers and conservation projects such as trees, hedgerows, etc., that they might have?
Well, everyone wants to get rid of their autumn olive now, so the relationship is pretty good with the CWMA. I receive requests for information quite often from agricultural managers. So I think that perhaps that group is a little bit more aware and willing to control the invasives on their property than some of the landowners that are a little bit closer to the urban areas that may not realize what the threats really are. We find bush honeysuckle is a lot more abundant in the western side of southern Illinois because that's where more of our urban areas are. On the eastern side of the Shawnee, it's a little bit more rare to find, which is another reason that we're making that a priority to try to control those infestations in the eastern Shawnee.
Okay. A few people are writing notes about, I think, how they'd like to cooperate and work with you. So you'll get those in your notes section when we send that out after the talk. Someone has a question about the WIM system with the Nature Conservancy. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Well, I'm actually going to go through my WIMS training in December.
Oh, good.
So that's something that I haven't worked with much since the strike team hasn't been on board. I do keep a spatial database of all the control work that the CWMA has done, and I'm going to be adding this into WIMS. So I'm looking forward to learning more about that system. I can tell you it is a free software that you can download, but for now that's all the assistance I can give. If there are enough people who are interested, then maybe we could have a presentation just on that system at some point.
Yeah, and we're going to have another webinar probably in January that goes over WIMS, but it also goes over probably 3 or 4 other options that are out there in terms of data collection right now. Some of the more up-to-date, newer technologies that are out there. So stay tuned on that one. You can see more details. Okay. Well, Carla, thank you so much. You got a lot of thank yous from the chat box there, and I'll send you all those notes, and you can get with each person individually if they have more questions. Thank you so much for your time. It's really good to hear all about your CWMA.
Great. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Have a good day.
Thank you.